In this video on combating analysis paralysis, I'm going to explain, first of all, how you end up with the paralysis when you're trying to do your analysis. Then we're going to listen to a surfer because they too are analyzing a lot of data. And I'm going to give you a solution for working with analysis paralysis in a way that accesses more of your brain power, more of your perceptual power, and certainly is going to feel more native and natural to you. I used to drive a lot of Volkswagens. Fully loaded Volkswagen going uphill on a headwind was extremely slow. Tuk, 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 which is about the equivalent of your conscious mind with processing information. It's say 50 bits of information. It's a small amount of information. Meanwhile, the subconscious mind, the rest of your body, all of what you're taking in around you, is processing data at about the speed of 50 million bits of information. There's a lot of information coming at us all the time. If you use your analytical mind to process it, your brain will hurt. You will break brain fuses. It's not pleasant. And you are going to feel that sense of paralysis around what do I do next? Because you're not going to get clarity. So that's one of the reasons why you feel this, where you hit this analysis paralysis. You're making a decision. You've got too much information to consider. It's coming in and you can't sort it or prioritize it. It calls for a shift in how you process information. This is why I went to a creator who's a lifestyle photographer, a surfer, and a mom. She's going to explain the context that they're surfing in, the kinds of waves, all of the conditions to set the stage. Surfing is one of those peak performance states where you have to be fully present with the environment you're in. You're processing a lot of complex data, high level data, very quickly to make your decisions.
There are different layers to surfing that you want to keep in touch with and keep your senses on. Wind and swell direction and tide might be the overarching view of whether the surf might be good or not. The other thing to keep in mind is when you're actually in the water, there are other things going on that might impact your experience in the water. One of them is timing, knowing when to actually get into a wave, and the other is where to be, your location, and where on the wave do you want to catch it. If you're on a longer board, that you might be further out the back and catch it before it breaks, or more on the shoulder where it's breaking a bit more softly. Or if you're on a shorter board, you want to catch it right at the peak and right at the breaking point. The water's just changing all the time. Full moon affects the tides. If the moon's full and the tide's really moving in and out really quickly, then that'll impact how much water is moving around, which can impact the current. But also, if there's a lot of swell coming in, then there's going to be more water moving around and the current will be stronger. Generally here, it's beach break. We have a lot of longshore current, which is current moving along the edge of the beach. And then we have the rip currents pulling out in certain channels of the beach and then on the edges of the bay. And in those situations, you just have to pick a landmark on the beach so you can keep track of where you're at. If you can really see yourself moving down the beach, then you want to paddle away out and out of the current and back to where you were having a nice time. Because often if the rip catches you, you'll notice that the waves have stopped and you're not catching the fun waves, and you'll want to get yourself back to where you started.
What's the nearest point of beach break and a reef?
Beach break is you're on the beach, so it's sandbars that are always changing depending on what the water's doing. If there's a really big storm, then it can be strong enough to pull sand out and then move it over to another area of the beach. When that happens, it can soften the waves in one spot and then make the waves stronger in the other where the sandbar is higher. Whereas reef break, it's consistent. Point break is where it's an edge of land and the water hits that edge of land and turns into a wave. The reef break is where there's a reef that hits the reef and it breaks along the reef. Beach break can be really tricky because it is always changing, whereas reef breaks and point breaks are more consistent.
The conditions that Lindsay describes for surfing is not a lot different than what you're dealing with when you're working with what looks like a small issue, but it's got a lot of information behind it and it's working at very fast speeds. It can be absolutely overwhelming. So rather than trying to run it through the very slow tuk, tuk, tuk part of your brain. Use your subconscious, use your senses. The best way to do that is to give a bit of guidance, tell your mind what you need to focus on, and your subconscious will look after that for you. This is where you can switch from analyzing things to death to suspending your analysis. Not to say that it's bad, just step away from it and go for a walk, let it simmer, let it sit, and then you will gain clarity and be able to move forward at a speed which is now in sync with the data that you're getting in. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that helped you. If you did like it, please share it. Please like, subscribe, and all those other good things. By the way, that was my daughter.